Hi, Professor Chinedu. How are you doing today? You're on mute. Can't hear you.
I'm doing really great. Thanks so much. How are you?
Oh no! I'm gonna stress your voice, but it's okay. I thought the voice was fully back. Good to see you. You're looking good.
Not quite, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, you look so good. Summer must be very good for you in Canada.
Oh, God has been good. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I think we can just we will be starting shortly.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to give you hosting right, Prof, so you can share your slides.
Beg your pardon?
Should I make you co-host so you can share your slides?
I would appreciate that.
Okay, so yes, making you co-host now.
Okie dokie. So you'll need to stop sharing.
Oh, I have to.
I can stop you.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Pastor Nii, thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good to see you. Okay, Prof, I will introduce you and then let you take the floor.
Sounds good.
Okay, I have to spotlight you. Analyst. Spotlight. Okay. Oh, I'm going to have to still share my screen, Prof, before.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. Day 3 of the 2022 Financial Literacy Workshop for teenagers and young adults and older adults. We have to add older adults now because we have some people get crashed in the program. But we're happy to have everyone, no matter your age. We're happy to have you join us today. We're going to start off with Professor Chinedu this evening, and then we would have Mrs. Fumi Oni take us through another 1 hour. We said this before, for people who have been coming, we'd like you to know that you can learn and earn, you can learn and gain something. The conditions are there, they are on the social media pages of Finance Coach. But the most important thing is that on the last day, after the last day, please send an email with your financial plan and a summary of the lessons you've learned and the personal actions that you want to take towards financial freedom. Please send it to financecoach@gmail.com. We'll put the email again in the chat box as we go on. We also encourage participants to learn more online. The 4 days event is just to get us out of our comfort zones and begin to ask more questions and be eager to learn new things to help our financial freedom journey. Today, Professor Chinedu will talk to us on how to prepare for an ACE examinations. And I said yesterday that it doesn't have to be for only people in college or in school. Graduates who also have professional certifications to work at would also benefit from this program. This is the 5th module. I'm very grateful to Professor Chinedu for collaborating with me and with the entire Finance Coach BK community She was also a speaker last year. I'm going to read her profile now to introduce her to you today. Professor Chinedu Mba, as I said, I started calling her Prof. She's a professor and program coordinator at Algonquin College in Ottawa, Canada, and she is an experienced administrator in the higher education industry. She's also a student success specialist, an education consultant, and an academic life coach and tutor. She will be teaching participants how to pass the examinations and be successful at school while explaining the place of academic success in achieving financial freedom. I am very grateful to Prof. Everyone that is working with me is also very grateful. Everybody is grateful that she's partnered with us because we know what it costs to give the kind of hand-holding that she's going to give to us today. It's a lot of money to have consultants help you with these things out there. So, but she's partnering with us for free and we're grateful for that. Prof, the floor is yours. I have now to test to make sure that we're streaming very well to Facebook for those who had difficulties yesterday. Thank you so much, Prof. I'll stop.
Sorry, I'll unmute myself. So good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. here. So it's a privilege to be with you today. I will get my screen out there. Can you all see my my slide?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit with you. So today I'll be focusing on Bimbo did say, Mrs. Kamala, forgive me, I call her Bimbo, did talk about acing exams.
And I'd
like to approach it from, I hope it's okay to call you Bimbo. I like to approach it from the science perspective, because sometimes when we talk about how to pass exams, sometimes we get emotional about it, but when we're able to back it up with science, then people it's more compelling. We present a more compelling argument, if I may use that word. So I'll go straight in. So I will be talking about what neuroscience teaches us about acing exams. And I should apologize for the quality of my voice. Just getting over a case of laryngitis, but I could not resist showing up to be part of this event. So my apologies. So the first question I like to ask is how students typically study. So what do students do? Usually students would go on marathon study sessions. If you have an exam coming up, I remember back in the day, people would drink their coffee, and now maybe they have all-nighters and they'll sit 2 days straight going to the classroom to study. They also like to rewrite their notes. You copy from one note onto the other, or copy from the textbook. They like to reread their notes. And so they copy their notes and then they go to the classroom or to their study spaces and sit down and read the notes over and over again. And this makes people feel like, oh, wow, I am putting in a lot of time, so I am doing really great. Some students like to cram notes. These are people who wait until the last minute, so maybe 2 days or the night before. They stay up and then they cram up all their notes, and then they go in and write their tests. Sometimes they get good marks, sometimes they don't. And I'm sure some of us have other styles we use for studying. So the next 30 minutes or so, I want to talk about what is really right. That is there. Are there right ways to do it? Are there wrong ways to study? And the answer is that yes, there is the right way to study, and we do have wrong ways to study. So let's look at a couple of things. What are the right ways? Number one. So there's something called fallacy of familiarity. If you remember, I talked about reading your notes over and over again. This gives you false confidence. So you read your notes several times and it's like, becomes your best friend, so to speak, but it does not mean that you actually understand everything or that you have retained what you have read. And so what should we do instead of just sitting and reading the notes 200 times so that we feel like, oh, I know this. I think I can ace my exam. So flashcards. A flashcard is really an index card, or you can get a sheet of paper and cut it 4 by 4 inches. And on the flashcard, you will write the key points of what you're reading so that you can put it face down, ask yourself a question, repeat the answer, and turn it back over to see if you got it right. What else can you do? You pause every 10 minutes or after every few pages, write down key points on a sheet of paper or your study notebook from what you've read. So what I'm saying here is perhaps you read a chapter or a section of a topic, close your book, and then on your notebook, write down things you recall from what you have read. And then you go back to the book, open it up, and compare your notes and make corrections. In class, it's really important that you take notes, but don't spend all your time writing, trying to catch up with what your professor or your teacher is saying. When you do that, you're not focusing, and so you're not listening and learning from what the teacher is saying. What you should do is listen, think about what the teacher has said, and write down the key points. You don't write everything your teacher says. And then right after class, you want to find a quiet spot and then recall what your teacher has said as much as possible and write down those key points. Once you've done this, you can go back to your textbook and compare what you recalled to what's in the textbook and then make needed corrections. Now, why is this important? You can see from everything I've talked about here, we are focusing on recalling. How much can you recall from what you've heard? This is better than just sitting and reading, because when you just sit and read your notes over and over again, you don't give your brain the chance to say, oh, can I do this? I like to talk about the brain as a muscle. So the more you exercise it and make it more elastic in terms of how far back it can go to pull back information that you already have, the easier it is for you to retain information, which is really why it's important to read. And so if you use flashcards, if you write notes, summary notes, and you try to recall, then you're sending a message to your brain that says, do not forget this. This information is pretty important. And so when you go into the exam to write your exam, it is now easier for you to recall what it is you learned. Now, number 2, avoid cramming. I already talked about cramming as one of the examples of what some of us do when we study for exams. And so cramming really is what you do when you have a marathon session and you memorize what it is that's in your book. So your marathon session, you're reading it, trying to grab as much as possible. Cramming, you're committing it to memory so you can recite it. Now, that's really not good, because when you do this, the brain is not able to use the information the way that will make it easy for you to recall when you get into the exam hall. What happens when you cram is, if you get into the exam and the questions don't come in the order you expect, you get lost. It trips you up and then you don't do well. And so when you rush to pack information, it does not translate to great grades. and you don't learn, because learning really is what happens when you retain that information and you can recall it and apply it in different ways, and then you can achieve great results. And so if your goal is just to go in, get a good grade, and get out and not be able to use that information again, then cramming is the way to go. So you cram 2 or 3 hours before, go into the exam, spit it out, and you leave. And then you might get a good grade if you are able to spit it out accurately. And so what's the alternative to cramming? Again, it's all about recall. So recall techniques, visual aids. There's something called mind mapping, drawing. You diagram what you read, create a picture, tell a story with what you're reading. That makes it easier for you to recall. Come up with acronyms so that you can, I remember in those days we used to have names of the rivers in Africa, and you would come up with a word and then you can break that down. Practice problems. So don't just read. If it's math, complete some exercises so that you have time to apply those steps and those rules. A whiteboard. There's something called SQR. So there's SQ3R. This is a system where before you start reading, you have a sheet of paper where you write S, Q, and R. The S is survey. The survey is before you start reading, open up the chapter and just flip through. Look at the headings. Look at the pictures. If there are graphs, look at the graphs. If there are captions, look at the captions, and do that and just go through. What that does is it gives you a general idea of what's in the text. And then you look at each heading, change that heading to a question. If the heading, for instance, is osmosis, change it to a question. What is osmosis? What that does for you is when you read, you are now searching for the answer to that question. And once you find the answer to that question, that is what you're going to write in your notes, your study notes, in your own words. That makes it easier for you to recall. And then the 3 R's would be where you have to review it, you have to recite it or say it back to yourself, and then you try to recall what you've read. Okay? And then there's this technique, which is really the best way to learn, or rather one of the best ways, is to try to teach someone what you think you know, and then go back. Because in teaching, you will find out if you really do know it, if you've missed some steps. This is why it's also a good idea to have study partners. So if you have a study partner, you can decide, I'm going to focus on this unit and I will teach it to you, and you focus on this unit and you'll teach it back to me. And together you can compare. And so whenever you have to study, it's really more important that you do things that would allow you flatten what we call the forgetting curve. And so science has shown us that there are intervals within which we need to keep doing things. If not, we forget what we have already learned. And so if you follow the rules of the forgetting curve as you study, then your chances of forgetting what you've read get slimmer. And so in summary, avoid cramming, rather use systems or techniques that would encourage recall. And so the more you practice, oh, that's a spelling error. The more you practice retrieving information from your memory, the better you get at it. And the third one, avoid marathon study sessions. So don't wait until the last 2 weeks of the term to study. Your brain does not do well when you focus on one subject for a long period. And so let's say, for instance, you're taking 5 courses and you have biology coming up first, and you say, well, I'm going to wait, and a week before biology, I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to throw myself into my biology text, and I'm going to study it for 5 days. That's not very helpful, and I'll tell you why. The brain, for want of a better way of expressing it, really enjoys a little bit of variety, especially when it comes to learning. And so instead of studying biology for 1 week and then going on to study math, change it up. Do biology 1 or 2 days, math 1 or 2 days, English 1 or 2 days, go back to biology 1 or 2 days. The brain does better in retaining information, because when you go back, when you give those breaks and you go back, it goes back to recall. You challenge your brain to pull back the information, and then you flatten the forgetting curve. And so another aspect to it is something called interleaving. Interleaving is a system where the brain works by trying to figure out things that are different. And so again, if you study maybe for 1 hour, you do a little bit of math, and you do maybe fractions, and then you take a break from doing fractions, maybe you want to do quadratics. And so again, it goes back to getting the brain to take that time to retain some information so you can go back and try to pull it out. And so that aspect of mixing it up is really healthy and makes it easier for you to recall what you've read. And so this is an example right here. You could spend 40 to 50 minutes on a subject or a topic, take a break, 40 to 60 minutes, and then you go back and you study for another 40 to 50 minutes. This is just an example. Sometimes you could study for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, because once you start studying and you're reading and you get into it, I would like to say you really get into the groove and it's making sense. It doesn't make sense to just stop after 40 minutes, but read that section and then take a break. You can watch some TV, play music, call a friend, sleep, get a snack, and then you go back to reading your book. That break you're taking is not time to do the practice test. That break you're taking is not time to use flashcards. That is not study time. It is a break so that your brain can refocus on something and move on to something else. Talita Kumi has her hand up. Did you want to ask a question? I'm happy to answer before I continue. Yes or no? Okay. I can't hear you if you're asking a question, so I'll just go right. I'll go right ahead. There's something in the chat here. Okay, that's not for me. Okay, so essentially what I'm saying here is that diminishing return sets in when you spend 3 to 4 hours on the same thing. So help your brain and practice interleaving. So study for a bit, take a break, do something different, and come back. Study one topic, change it up, study another topic. Study one subject, change it up, study a different subject, change it up, study a different subject, and come back to that first subject. And that way you'll find that it's easier for you to remember what you've been studying. So the fourth way, use spaced repetition. So I alluded to this a little bit. So review your notes at a systematic interval. Don't be random about the way you review your notes. Create a schedule. It's more effective than cramming. It reduces the forgetting curve, and it involves actively recalling material that you have learned. So, in the first week of school, you review your materials at closer intervals. Maybe you review every hour, every 4 hours, once a day, you know. And then by the second week, you spread it out. Instead of reviewing it back to back, you do it maybe every 2 or 3 days. The idea is that by having systematic intervals, it makes it easier again for your brain to recall. When I work with students, I like to use something called the box method. And so what I have them do is they get a card and we create a plan. And it's going to be on day 1, I'm going to do mathematics, day 2, biology, day 3, let's say chemistry. And once I complete math, I'm going to move it to the box right at the end. And then when I complete the mathematics, I'll move it to the space after the biology, so that it's easy for me to rotate and I know what I have done and what I have not done. And I'm not doing some random kind of review. There is a plan, and there's the interval is regular. And so the principle here is that when you repeatedly encounter material at a spaced interval, it is better than reviewing the same material several times during a study session. Number 5, welcome frustration. Challenges and new ways of doing things lead to frustration. And so, should you give up? No. The truth really is that when you start doing something for the first time, it can be very difficult. I like to compare it to going to the gym. When you start going to the gym, your muscles hurt really badly. But when you keep up the exercise, you find that it doesn't hurt as much. And once it stops hurting, that is the time to increase your repetition or increase the weight you use for your exercises, because your muscles will only grow if they are stretched. So the muscles have to sort of, in a clean way, sort of stretch and tear and repair and then grow. And it's the same thing. I listened to a couple of the presentations 2 days in a row now, and I could see that each of those success stories encountered difficulties, frustrations, but the success came from persevering. They did not give up. They embraced the frustration, they embraced the challenge, and tried to find a way around it. And so, if you're trying a new system and it is challenging, you are on the right track because you're making an effort. And so you should keep working on it. Like I said before, treat the brain like it's a muscle that's getting an exercise. Do not give up. Trust the process, follow the guidelines, and it gets easier as you keep doing it. So challenge really is a good thing. And so study in a way that's pretty easy. Just an example will be just sitting down and reading those, pages, your notes. That's pretty cool. It's easy. You spend 2 hours flipping through the pages and reading. That's a complete waste of time. But when you apply things like using the flashcard, trying to recall, completing practice tests, trying to teach someone, those things are challenging. That is when you really are making good use of your time and you can recall what you need when you get into the exam. And number 6, set a goal for every study session. Again, like most of the speakers in the past 2 days, it's all about goal setting, knowing what it is you want to achieve. Is it financial freedom? Well, you have to be educated. And so set a goal. Be clear in your mind what it is you want to accomplish in the next 2 hours when you sit down to study. So let's say, for instance, you want to study a chapter in your biology textbook. And that chapter is, and I'll go back again to osmosis. Don't just sit down and say, my goal here is to read this chapter. That's not going to help you. So you want to set a SMART goal, okay? So that you know what it is you want to do, so that you recognize when you have achieved that goal. Setting goals is a good predictor of better grades. And like I said, if you set the goal, it helps you accomplish more in life. Like those speakers from yesterday and the day before did say, you're able to monitor your milestones to see if you reach them. You know when to ask questions. You know when to seek help. And it keeps you accountable. You need to make your goals SMART. And what do I mean by making your goals SMART? It has to be specific. So it has to be one thing that is clear to anybody that that is what you want to achieve. It has to be measurable, which means you should be able to know how far you've come. If your goals are measurable, you should be able to say, I am halfway to meeting my goals because I have done this, this, and this. I can see me meeting my milestones. If it's not measurable, then you're waiting to the end to see if you've met the goal. The danger there is you don't even know when you get to the end, and you don't know if you're on track. You don't know if you need help. You don't know if you should stop and retrace your steps. So you have to make your goals measurable. Has to be achievable or attainable. And what I mean here is you have to make sure that you have what you need to meet those goals. So for instance, you're preparing for your biology test and you want to get, let's say you've been getting 50% and you're looking to get 70%. Well, do you have a textbook? Because if you don't have a textbook, then that goal is not achievable. Do you have a quiet spot where you can sit down to study? Because if you don't have a place and time set out for studying, then that goal is not achievable. Do you have, let's say, notepads, or do you have a study partner, or do you have a support system set up so that if you don't understand something, you can go back and ask your teacher or your tutor? If you don't have that, then the goal is not achievable. So when you set your achievable, your goals and you're making them SMART, they have to be specific. You have to be clear in your mind what it is you're doing. Okay, I've been getting 50%. My goal here is to get 70% my next test. Okay, is it measurable? Yes, it's measurable because I'm going to set up steps that I can check to see if I can achieve that goal. Is it achievable? Yes, because I have everything I need in place. If you identify that you don't have all you need, all the resources you need, then you have to make sure you reach out for help and get those resources. Relevant and realistic. What I mean here is a goal is relevant if it's important to you. If it's important to you, then you are motivated and you have the drive to go for it when it becomes challenging and when the frustration sets in. A goal is realistic because it applies to your life right now or maybe 5 years down the road. But if we set goals that are kind of airy and really are not relevant, it's easy for us to just give up when it becomes difficult because there's nothing motivating us. Time specific. It has to start at a particular time. There is a due date or deadline for that goal. And in between, there are time slots set up for certain activities. If not, you don't have a system, and then you can't achieve that goal. So, bringing this back to your study session, if you want to study, you can say, every Tuesday, I am going to spend 2 hours studying my biology. I will do this from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. every Tuesday, and I will be sitting in the kitchen when everybody's gone out. And then you have to be clear what you would study. If it's when the 2 hours come, Tuesday, 4 p.m., what will I study? Biology, yes. What unit? Okay, the unit on osmosis. And then, what is my goal for this unit? My goal for this unit is by the time I'm done studying this chapter, I should be able to define or explain what osmosis means to myself and identify 3 or 4 factors that affect it. That's your goal. And then you go and you sit down and you study. You can use your flashcards or whatever it is you've set up for it. Study. At the end of your study period, you will know if you've met those goals because you should be able to define or explain what osmosis is, and you should be able to talk about the 3 or 4 factors that affect it. And you should be able to do this in the time that you've scheduled. So create a system, identify distractions, come up with interventions, get an accountability partner, and write all of this down. Critical. Creating the system, I always say it's good to have a calendar. Everybody has a smartphone. Go into your smartphone and plug in all those study times. Set up your alerts. 1 day before, 1 hour before, 10 minutes before, and at the time of, so that you have no reason not to go and study at that time. Identify distractions. Sometimes we set up goals and we forget that life happens. And so I like to say to my students, so you want to finish reading this book. What are the possible distractions? Oh, okay, well, my friend could call me on the phone. Okay, good. So what should you do? Okay, I can tell my friend my study hour is from 2 to 6. Please don't call me. That's great. What else could you do? I could turn off my phone. Excellent. What else could you do? I could tell my mom to hold on to my phone so that I'm not tempted to go and take it and check messages. So identify possible distractions, come up with interventions so that you're able to address them. Get an accountability partner. An accountability partner is not someone who will nag you and wrestle you down to study. No. An accountability partner is your cheerleader and someone who will check in with you to make sure that you're doing what you said you will do. And when you know that there's someone who's checking in, then you're more driven to keep up with whatever it is you've determined to do. Write it down. Studies have shown that when we set goals and we don't write those goals down and put them up where we can see them and share with our accountability partner, the chances of meeting those goals drop. And so, people who set goals and write them down are 33% more likely to achieve them than people who don't. And so those are my references and the next steps. I'm available, as Ms. Mba will tell you. I'm happy to help you one-on-one in small groups. She has my contact information, and I'm happy to take up any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Professor Chinedu. Especially as you're just, you've been under the weather and you had to push yourself to do this. Thank you very much. I should also say a big thank you to Mrs. Martha Jesuleke, who was very happy to do the backup for you.
Thank you. Is she here today?
I think she's on, if your voice did not come back. So a big thanks to both of you for this session, because I was so scared when you sent me that recording of your croaky voice. Thank you so much. People around the call, please put your questions, and if you have clarifications you would like to get out of her, this is your opportunity to get some services free of charge. Our second speaker is already on. Coach Fumi Oni, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So we still have 20 minutes to discuss with Professor Chinedu. Please put your questions in the Q&A box, or if you have already put it in the chat box, I'll get to it. But I want to start with one quick question, Prof. I know you know me, Oliver Twist. This question is probably the type that you get your hard-earned dollars before you answer. But a quick one, you know, you schooled in Nigeria. I know you guys like to call yourself lions, right? Because I'm married to a lion. So, you know, you schooled in one of the reputable universities in Nigeria, UNN, and you've been away out of the Nigerian education system now for, I'm sure, close to 20 years. Am I right?
21 years.
21 years, okay. So I know around the call, I know some of my friends, I have somebody who joined us from Zambia, there are a couple of people from the UK and some people from Canada, and most of us are here in Nigeria. I just want you to give like 2 to 3 tips to people who are trying to migrate from the Nigerian education system to the, I will use the word Western, you know what I mean, Canada, USA, or the UK. What should they expect? Perhaps there are people around the call now who are trying to make that change or switch. Or even maybe there are people who are already, who made the switch but are struggling. What are the things that people need to watch out for so they don't struggle too much settling into the education system outside Nigeria?
That's an important question. I guess what I would say, it's really cultural, depending on the age of the person too. But okay. So back in Nigeria, and I would say most African countries, parents are helicopter parents. They swoop down to make sure their children don't fail or don't struggle. And as a result, most of us are truly not independent in so many ways. And so I have found that many young people who come out to North America to study are thrown by the fact that most of the kids they have in the class with them are pretty independent. These are children who start working from age 14. So they really understand what time management is, and they understand the value of time and money. They've pretty much been running their own lives. So if you're thinking of coming out to North America to study, self-discipline is really important. You really have to be disciplined to know when to play video games, when to go to class, and know when to ask questions. Please do not be afraid to ask for help. Only champions ask for help, honestly. That's one. Two, the culture is really very different again, like I said. And so the risk is that many people come over and they want to be cool, because back home, mom and dad have not allowed you to be cool. And it's really your first time of being independent on your own, so to speak, and you lose focus. So please don't forget who you are and where you're coming from. And I don't know if there are parents who are on this call.
Yes, we do have some parents. Thank you for mentioning the helicopter virtue of African parents.
Yes, please. One, I know home is really not safe, but please get your children to start volunteering. And I don't mean just in the church, even at school. It is critical. Two, get your children to start learning to speak your language. I'm not English. If you're Yoruba, your children should learn to speak Yoruba. If you're Igbo, they should learn to speak Igbo. If you're Hausa, whatever your language is, let them be as fluent as possible in that language, please. And I'll tell you why. In some programs here, you're required to take a second language. And most students find themselves going to take French because that's the thing that's on offer. And if you don't ask questions, you don't know. But the truth is that if you're fluent in Yoruba, for instance, and you're required to take a second language, and you go to your academic advisor and say, I'm actually fluent in Yoruba, I can read it and I can write it, and you can demonstrate proof, you get the credit. You don't have to take that second language. You get credit for it. So it's important to ask questions. So I think I've said 3 things here. Discipline is important. Stay focused. Don't forget where you're coming from. And for the parents, please don't be helicopter parents. Sometimes it's good for them to crash and burn. They won't die. If they will die, then you can swoop in and save them. But if it's to fail a class, it's okay. They can fail a class. They'll repeat and they'll learn. If they have to repeat 3 or 4 times, then that's what they need to do. Because when they come out here, you'll find out 1 year after that your child has not been going to class. That's the truth. So let them volunteer, whatever it is. They can learn to stitch. If they're not volunteering, let them learn a skill. Photography, tailoring, vulcanizing, whatever it is, let them do. Learn a skill because it helps with the maturity. I'm not sure if I've answered your question. Oh, most importantly, know your child and pick a school that has a culture that suits your child's personality. So please don't send your child to a school because your best friend's child is there and is doing really well. Doesn't mean your child will do well there. Know your child. Send your child to a school that suits the child's personality. It might be a smaller school, less known, but your child will be more successful going to that school because your child will get the support the child needs to be successful. Mental health is really important, please. It's very lonely out here, very lonely out here. So the child's mental health is really important. Know your child. Encourage your children to speak up. Here, nobody's going to be running after your child to ask, are you doing okay? You know, have you eaten? And things like that. There are support systems, but everybody's really busy. But mental health is important. The great thing is that there are great support social systems here that will help, but we don't want to get to that point where the child is really struggling. There's really so much. I run workshops on all of this, but there's so much. Bimbo, I'm not sure I answered the question.
Oh, no, you did. You answered so well. You answered so well because, yeah, let me give you the space to talk because you're the expert here. But what you said resonates with me so very well. You know, the difference for me, the most important is the way the parents, the independence that you mentioned. So anybody wishing to come out to where you are or leave Nigeria must get used to taking decisions on their own and doing things, managing their time and all of that. Because indeed, back home here, we kind of handhold. Quickly, I have a question. Thank you very much. You answered it very well. There's a question here. Given that you started with the neuroscience about the examinations, passing examinations, someone is asking you to advise how many hours do you think, or do you advise for students to sleep, students working towards excellence? Is there a minimum or maximum number of hours that students should? You talked about mental health.
Is it mental health or study? What are we talking about?
No, the person is asking, how many hours do you recommend for somebody to sleep, for a student that wants to be effective in studying?
There is, that's an important question, and I'm happy you asked it, because every child is different. Every person is different. So it's not right to say 1 hour every day or 2 hours every day. Every person is different. So depending on who the individual is and what the life is like, then we can suggest. So I'll give you an example. When I work with students, one of the first things we do, and Bimbo, you know this, is we do a time audit. I do a time audit with a student because I really want to know what your life is like at home, at school, and what do you do with your time. And once we do that time audit, taking into consideration what happens at school, then I also like to find out if there have been some psychological testing done, because really every child is different. So some students or some people have some underlying signs of ADHD or autism or dyslexia, and I can't say spend 2 hours, because someone could be dyslexic and not know that the person is dyslexic. And then I say spend 2 hours or 3 hours every day without giving you the strategies. That's not fair. That's setting you up to fail. So Bimbo, there isn't one right answer for that. It depends on who the person is and what the person's situation is.
I see. I remember, yeah, thank you so much, Prof. I remember the videos you shared with me, very eye-opening videos. Indeed, the reason I hope I didn't cut into your conversation when I mentioned mental health was, I'm not the expert here, but I know that it's important that every student gets, like you say, depending on the circumstances, get enough rest, you know, that their individual bodies require before they have the mental breakdown. That was the link I was trying to, you know, make earlier on. There are so many questions here. Somebody, and we have just 8 more minutes. You talked about volunteering and getting leadership skills before they come, you know, to North America and, you know, outside Nigeria. I know the importance, but someone is asking you, what is the importance of these?
So the importance of that is not just for your own life and managing your life, but also if you want to get a job. So the competition is stiff. The competition is stiff. The job market, the competition is stiff. And so you really need something that sets you apart. When you come as an immigrant, because that's what you will be when you come here, you have to demonstrate that you are almost 10 times better than a Canadian or an American to get that job. So you have to make sure you're bringing your A game. And how do you bring your A game? By building those skills, your leadership skills, acquire them. And as they say back home, the hustle is real. So you really have to come with the best. That's why. There's no other reason.
Yeah.
That's it. You
Yeah,
have to.
To have an
The
advantage.
thing is, sorry, if I may just add this and I'll be quiet. So everybody here who's successful is started. If the person is not doing 2 jobs, the person has done 2 or 3 jobs at some point in their life. And I'm talking about even chief executives, university presidents, and what have you. There is it's all about the dignity. There's dignity in labor. So be ready to be a babysitter. Babysit. That's a great skill if you can babysit. People think, oh, my child. It is a great skill if you can babysit. Think what you're learning when you babysit. It's not just the time management and all that, but your people skills. Conflict management when you babysit. So those things are really important. Be creative in finding ways you can acquire these skills. And please volunteer. Everything is not about money initially, but in the end, it all pays.
Thank you so much, Professor Chinedu. There are so many other questions, but I just want to put it out here for the students around the call and the parents or mentors that may be around the call. Professor Chinedu, if you look at the her bio that we put out and the advert that we put out, she is available to counsel one-on-one. She's available to handhold one-on-one if you need special attention. It will cost you some money, but being part of this program, I'm sure she will not give us international rates if you have to get to her. She will give you the Finance Coach BK discounted rate. Please bear that in mind, and it may not be for you, it may be for someone around you who is having some difficulties settling in or maybe organizing himself or herself to get the most out of the opportunity to school abroad. Making a switch can be difficult for people. I know she's working with a number of people, and I know that there have been changes in the circumstances of the people she's worked with. So please bear that in mind, and if you need to reach her, her details are available. She's September month online. I'll put it in the chat box. I'll put her Instagram handle in the chat box. But if at any time later you remember that you need this kind of help, or you come across someone that needs this kind of help, please send a note to me or contact me over any of my social media handles, and I would definitely link you up. Thank you so much, Prof, for sharing your time with us this evening. There's one last question. I don't know if it's a difficult or a simple one, but the question is, you've given us your presentation on how students can succeed better at the examinations and everything. Looks as if it's for people who, let me use the word standard. Okay, the word is standard. How about people who are struggling, the kind of people that I'm saying should reach out for your professional support, the kind of people who, not because they're lazy, right? Not because they're lazy, it's just that they have the difficulty. Remember the 2 videos that you sent to me, and that's what I'm talking about now. How can you help such people, or what do you recommend apart from seeking professional help?
So if I understand correctly, what you're asking is if a student has perhaps a modified education plan, how can the person be supported? Is that what you're asking?
Is the professional jargon modified? What I mean is a student who has difficulty. I don't know if that's what you're calling modified.
Okay, so, well, difficulties vary. So the thing is really, when you work with students, as when you work with anyone, it's not, there isn't one size that fits all. So depending on what the person presents, then there will be strategies to support. So I'll give you an instance and then I'll get off. So sometimes you have, you're a student and you are really passionate. You are doing your very best.
Exactly.
You sit in front of the class, you write all your notes, you spend all this time studying, and you're not getting good grades. And your parents don't seem to appreciate that you're really doing your best. And you are. But it's not your fault, honestly, because you're doing your best with what you have. There could be a variety of things. I mentioned dyslexia. You could be dyslexic and nobody knows because it presents in very strange ways. And so what happens is you hear it, but then in your brain, it all jumbles up. And so when it's time to produce, you're confused. You don't know what to do. Sometimes it's not dyslexia. Sometimes it has to do with the attention. And so you're highly distractible. It's not because you don't care, but that's just because that's the way you are. But there are strategies that you can be taught that will help you focus. Sometimes it's processing, information processing. Your brain is just not processing it properly. And so it goes in, but it doesn't get into where it should be so that it stays in the long-term memory. And so it's just in the short-term memory. And you forget very quickly. As soon as you hear it, before you write it down, you forget. That's not your fault. That's just the way you are physiologically, you know. So you need strategies. So Bimbo, I guess what I'm saying is, I have found that most students who struggle are not struggling because they are lazy. They are not struggling because they don't care. But the students begin to show attitudes or behaviors that suggest that they don't care because they are sad and angry and upset that in spite of all they're doing, they're not successful. And so I would encourage students like that to speak to their moms and dads, and for parents to please listen to their children and help find answers. Students are struggling not because they don't care. And when they show that they don't care, it's because they've tried so hard and they're not getting the help they need. That's why. So it's kind of chicken and egg and chicken, which one comes first? I'm not sure if I answered your question, Bimbo.
You did.
There's no one size that fits all.
Yeah, you did. I think it just goes back to what I was saying, that people that need help should reach out and get help. Increasingly, we're seeing people who are offering this kind of support that you are offering, and then enlighten parents and because parents also need to understand what you just said in order to get the help for their children. So we're seeing increasingly also that parents are getting more enlightened and are understanding that this children or these students need this special help. So what I would just add is that for students that are around the call, whose maybe mentors or parents or guardians have identified that they need this kind of help, they should not shun such help when offered by their parents. Like you've said, sometimes they just need the hand-holding and the support from a professional to be able to start flying, start doing so well. Thank you so much, Professor Chinedu. And thank you for not hesitating every time we call you. And thank you so much for pushing yourself in spite of having been under the weather. Ladies and gentlemen, around the call, we are now 99 people. Can you please all give a hand clap using your sign, your emojis for Professor Chinedu? I will do the physical clapping here. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Please stay on if you can. Okay, I remember you have a schedule. Okay, I'm just gonna, can you stop sharing so I can start sharing?
I believe I stopped sharing already.
Okay, sure. Once I start sharing, okay, so I'm gonna.
So you just remove my spotlight, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.